What's going on, collectibles friends? Another collectibles dad video. Thanks very much for joining me here today. Alf, thanks you as well. Guys, we're going to talk about a topic, and I'm really getting sick and tired. You will not hear other comic book YouTubers talking about this, and I don't understand why, because it's so painfully obvious. Today we're going to talk about why I believe that graded comic book prices will fall in 2024. We've got a few different reasons, so make sure you stay until the very end. First off, let me share a recent comic book pickup that I am mega excited about. I'm a Spawn guy, and this is Spawn 1. This is that 1997 release. Of course, not the original release, but it's the limited print version. It's signed in the yellow ink by Todd McFarlane. This is one that I had going pre-pandemic. I sold it kind of heading into the big comic book boom, and I've always wanted to get it back, so I'm excited. I actually had a 9.0 yellow label that was red ink signed by McFarlane. This one, of course, the yellow ink, just to match up with that yellow label. This is the one that I wanted, and I was able to pick it up recently, so very excited about that. And the reason why I picked up that book is because it is fairly limited on the census. I like the combination of print run with, of course, the signature series. Now, could there be a bunch more Todd McFarlane signed versions in the future? Sure. But when I compare the census report, the population report, to other key books, it's still very low. And I understand Spawn is not as popular as Spider-Man. For me, in my 1991-92 childhood nostalgia days, Spawn, man, it was something else. So I'm very happy to have that book. All right, guys. What we've got to wrap our heads around, it's very, very important. This is going to be reason number one why I believe that prices will fall, is that the graded supply for a lot of these key books will continue to rise. We're not there yet. We're just not there yet. And a lot of the comic book YouTubers will not tell you this. I don't understand why nobody speaks up on it, because it's so damn painfully obvious, especially when a lot of the comic book YouTubers are dealers themselves. So they are out there saying exactly what I'm talking about. And what is that? Collections of key books that are bronze, copper, silver. These are not rare books. These are books from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And they are coming out of collections. I have friends that have raw copies of certain books that they have held on to, and they're just like, I don't really know anything about grading, but they've got 40 copies of this stuff. There are books out there. And so I guess my main point is we are in a robust grading era. It is the massive grading era. And here's my thing is that what if the populations, the census that you're looking at now, what is that going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years? Will it be double? Will it be triple? Or was it a limited print book? Is there something scarce about it? Because if it was a wide release, if it was something that was printed to the moon, even going back to the 60s, it's something that we should watch for. Because again, if we go back over the last 5 years in comic book grading, they've graded more books in the last 5 years at CGC and CBCS than they did in the previous 10 prior to that. How old is CGC? 15 years into grading comic books. Something like that, roughly. In the last 3-4 years, they probably graded more books than they did the entire length of the time that they were in business previously. And that's a good thing. I like the idea that, hey, look, I'm a fan of graded books, but my issue is that we're buying based on what we believe is to be a supply that is there. Oh, population's 1,000 for a 9.8, let's just say, for whatever book, or 9.6 or 9.2 or 4, whatever. They're still finding them. They're still grading them. If we look at graded sports cards, my other channel, Sports Card Dad, we talk about this. There's been decades and decades of grading. So we've got a fairly good idea of kind of where we sit with a lot of these cards. If we're going back to vintage baseball cards or football cards or basketball cards, they're still finding those, but at least we're kind of more deep into that process. With comic books, I don't think we're there yet. It's the same with graded video games, same with graded action figures. We're not quite there yet. So we're buying based on what we believe to be scarcity, because that census report is telling us, hey, that thing is rare. But what I'm telling you is that there's still stuff to be graded. It's still out there, especially if it's from the 80s. They made a lot of stuff in the 80s, and there's a lot of hoarders that are holding back on us that are sending in stuff to get graded. So graded supply continuing to rise. This is something that has affected Hulk 181. I'll use it as an example because, my God, if there's a top 5, top 10 comic book, biggest sales, and oh my God, the sales of the week and blah, 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 Hulk 181 will make that list every damn time. It'll be Hulk 181. How many raw copies of Hulk 181 are sitting out there waiting to be graded? I've seen comic book influencers that are flashing 20 copies of Hulk 181. And when I see that, I immediately think, all right, I do not need to buy a Hulk 181. I need to wait. I need to wait because if some dude out here's got 20 or 30 copies of Hulk 181 that are not graded yet, they'll eventually be graded. And once that supply hits the market, more supply, price down. It's not scarce. So for Hulk 181, it's a book that I want. I'm happy to wait for it though, because I know that there's going to be more graded copies to come. Secondly, Marvel and DC Universe. So let's go back in time a little bit. Marvel almost went bankrupt, if you can believe it. Now Disney owns them. They're all-time highs. Every Disney movie was going ballistic going back a few years. Well, now the rubber meets the road, and it's not the case anymore. Both Marvel and DC movies struggling at the box office. Outside of fan favorites like Guardians of the Galaxy and Spider-Man movies, they're releasing a lot of stuff on Disney Plus. Nobody's really watching it. She-Hulk and, whatever else. DC Universe struggling, puddling along, trying to revive itself. I love the Batman movie. I hope they kind of continue along that trend of kind of like the darker version. I like the Batman movie. There's going to be a sequel coming up. But they're kind of puddling along a little bit. But here's the thing is we've had, going back to the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, all the way back to the early 2000s X-Men movies and that sort of thing, we've had like a nice rise of spec and like good movies coming out and everyone's excited. And now we just hit the wall, whether it's oversaturation, saturation, or whatever the case may be. People are just getting kind of, they're just a little bit blah about it. And it's not to take away from those original books, those key books, but it has had an effect. The economy as a whole, the global economy, kind of struggling a little bit, and we might see a little bit more struggle to come. But there's also, again, we've just kind of hit a wall a little bit with both Marvel and DC. Are people still buying graded keys? Of course they are. Of course they are. But there's something happening, though. There's something happening in the entertainment world. But remember, a lot of the spec money, a lot of that stimulus money in North America, a lot of that spec was all around the movies and the shows and guessing the next villain and guessing the next movie and blah, blah, blah. Who's going to be the next movie? Who's going to be the... And now what's happening? Now people are like, you know what? Screw it. I don't really care that much. And so when they talk about the ebbs and flows, I feel like we're kind of flowing downward. And I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to be honest here. We've had a lot of highs. Disney with the Avengers movie, Avengers Endgame, Thanos coming into the picture, all the rest of it. There's a lot of like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But we have obviously hit a wall with it. It's very, very clear. It's not even like, I'm not speculating. It's just clear that people are either just tired of it, the movies aren't good enough, or they're just over it. And this is kind of the human condition, isn't it not? We get excited about something. We're all worked up. You've got kind of like a few years. It's the rise and the fall, and hopefully the rise again. Marvel and DC have such a deep-rooted North American pop culture history. I like the stuff long term. Long term, I like the stuff. But in the short run, I am really wondering. I'm really wondering kind of what is going to go on. And again, it's the reason why I'm making the video, why I think prices will dip in 2024. I just don't see a lot of optimism. I'm seeing a lot of struggle with Bob Iger and Disney and the DC universe. What's going to happen with it? So yeah, we've got a lot of spec money that's still hanging out there and just a lot of question marks around comic books. And lastly, the last thing that I will say here that makes me a little uneasy is, on the comic book grading side, we're going to talk about graded comic books taking a fall. CGC taking a hit here recently was a couple of different scandals. They've responded well. They've certainly responded well as far as just going after and just trying to make right kind of all the things going on with people slipping books in and out of slabs and whatever. But, there's still work to do. It's not a mature market in the sense that I think we need better slabs. I think we need better slab technology with CGC. CBCS, I don't know. Do they have the same issues? I saw them come out and respond in an interview to the CGC stuff and talking. I wasn't blown away by it. I wasn't blown away when I watched the interview of like, you know what? CBCS is going to now take the helm. They're taking over. I didn't get that feeling at all. So I guess my point here is that as we're all spending a lot of money on paper, expensive paper, it's not as if we're in a mature market, I don't believe, with grading. I think third-party grading needs to evolve. It needs to get, not in the sense of just grading books, but just the technology of slabbing the books. There's just more, there's more to do. There's more work to do. And if there needs to be more players in the market, if there needs to be more comic book graders to come in, or the current graders just getting better and evolving with the times and just getting better service, better quality, all the rest of it, then that's what it takes. But we're not there yet. I think when I look at the current market, I just think like, is this it? Because I don't think it is. I think we can do better. So there's a few different factors here. And I think that one thing that we do have is we have excitement. We have excitement around collectibles, comic books and key books and graded books. There's a lot of amazing items out there. There's so much to be happy and to enjoy in the graded comic book market. But the prices, the current prices for certain books, there's some I think that are probably underpriced. There's some that are probably priced just right. And there's some that are obviously overpriced. And we're not quite there yet. There's some kinks that have to be worked out. I think for long-term holders, there's going to be opportunities coming because, again, based on what I just said here, there's just room to grow. There's room to improve, and we're just not there quite yet. All right, friends, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.